All right. Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone, and to the um I'll say second to last candidate focused
That's true.
session. We
Oh
do
yeah.
have a Board of Health candidate who will be speaking with us next week, which I'm really hoping will help just shine some light on what it is the Board of Health does. But we're still on school committee, and our last candidate, Donna McKenzie, who's served on the school committee before, has run before. Donna, and of course, is a Coffee with a Purpose regular. So, Donna, we're happy to have you here with us. Recognize everybody on the chat this morning, and I think you do too. So, we could probably dispense with introductions, and unless anybody feels horribly compelled. Uh, um, So I think at this point, let me just turn it over to you, Donna.
But I'm really happy to be here. My name is as you know, I'm Donna McKenzie, and it's spring, so I'm running for school committee, and um, and I'm actually really excited to run for school committee, and I have a lot of hopes for school committee, and school committee is really important, and education is important to me. I'm a lifelong educator, and I would like to, I think I can help improve the schools, and I'm looking forward to trying to do that. And I have a simple platform, simple yet challenging, and I call my platform or my base. The B stands for belonging, the A for achievement, the S for sustainability, and the E for experience. And I begin with belonging because I think what is really critical for our students, first of all, is to feel safe. You cannot learn if you do not feel safe in whatever environment you find yourself in. You can't feel like, I think maybe all of us at some point in our own education may have experienced bullying or teasing or being made fun of, but students really need to feel welcome and feel graciousness, and they need to feel like they have something to contribute. If you feel safe, then that is the best footing in which you can begin your education. And life is really complex today. We have students who are undocumented, and I don't know what our recent attendance records are, but I know there are our nearby neighboring towns have students who are their parents are even afraid to send them to school. So safety is a huge concern and a big concern, and the starting point for my platform. We also have 2% of our town is Black, and we have Black students in our schools, but yet they still are the subject of racial incidents. And that just is not acceptable. Nobody, our Muslim students, our Jewish students, nobody. The bottom line is everyone needs to feel welcome. Everyone needs to feel that they belong. And we need to do as much as we can, take policy as far as we can in terms of bullying and creating that kind of atmosphere. And it's really, really critical. My next point is achievement because the Natick schools, we are here to educate children and help them become the best people that they can become. We have really smart kids, and everybody achieves at a different level, right? We have some amazing graduates from this high school. We have kids who have gone on to Broadway, right, and have starred in Broadway shows. Bill Finn, Mark Leibowitz, quite a while back, but we still have some incredible stars from this high school. And we have doctors, lawyers, but every child, no matter what their capability, needs the support and the resources to become the best human being that they are capable of becoming. And we need to help them accomplish that with whatever ways that we can, not being spendthrifts. I think that's important too. Um, but achievement, that's the very reason for existing. And public schools exist to help also create students who can contribute meaningfully to society. We educate for citizenship and participation in the world. And that's why we fund schools through our tax dollars. And we pay for schools, whether we have kids in the schools or not, because there's a sense in which all 5,300 or more of these children belong to us in Natick. They are our kids, and we have the responsibility of care to help them become the best people that they can become. The next thing that's really important to me is sustainability. And I think of sustainability in two parts. First is economic sustainability. We need to provide schools that are economically sustainable, and we need the most bang for our buck. We need to do it thoughtfully. We need to do it carefully. And at last, our school budget is now over $100 million. It's $100,600,000. That is a ton of money. And I think every single taxpayer in the town deserves to know and, frankly, be proud of the kind of education they are providing for our Natick children with that kind of money. And I'm not saying we need to make radical cuts because we actually have what one might describe as a fairly level services budget at this point. And that literacy specialists have been cut from this budget. It's not something I would have chosen to cut, but there are questions. We are going to have to make wise and judicious decisions about the cost in the future. The school committee had this choice this year. They were presented with an option of a smaller budget, slightly smaller, that had a 4.9% increase, I think, instead of the 5.4%, but they are going for the 5.4% budget. But I have to say, it's always when you're on school committee, we've never had overwhelming sums of money. We're not going out and starting incredible programs we've never had before, anything like that. We're always trying to make the best that we can with the money that we can. And it's even more critical that we do this in the future. The next part of sustainability, I think, is really important, has to do with the way we live together and ecology. And
Yes. Just have to get something. Okay.
Sorry.
And making the world a better place. Ecology is actually really important to this generation of students also. And when we build schools, we need to build them as sustainable as we can, because it's almost like buying a car or buying a computer. As soon as you own it, it's already decreased in value. And we need to be sure that we are helping the environment and not harming the environment. And there are ways that we can do that. I guess I have a dream. The same time I talk about economic sustainability, I have a dream that if and when we build a new memorial school, that we can build it with geothermal, for example, and that we can escape some of the horrible pitfalls of carbon fuels and really go into the future as in a sustainable fashion as we can. So sustainability is really important. The athletic surfaces we have our children playing on matter. Carbon emissions matter. Electric school buses matter. It all matters. And lastly, experience. Experience matters. And I think that I personally, as a lifelong educator, have the experience that's necessary to bring change and to help grow the Natick schools. I am a longtime teacher. I've taught in all kinds of settings. Doing my doctorate, I ran an after-school program for at-risk children in Oakland, California. I've done after-school tutoring in Philadelphia, in a garage. Mostly, I'm a college professor and have taught at the college level, but I have also taught high school, and I had the privilege of teaching at Boston College High School a few years back, which was I just loved it, and I marveled at what they were able to do. And our teachers are our greatest resources. I know that not just because I was a teacher and I want to be valued, but because they really are. It sounds like teachers really do change lives. I talked to a friend from college last night, and she was reminiscing about how it was one of her grade school teachers that helped her believe that she was smart. She didn't think that she was smart. She came from a home where there was some abuse. Her mother blamed her for failing out of her doctoral program at Columbia because she was pregnant with her while she was in the process of doing her orals. And she had a very difficult childhood, but it was a grade school teacher who told her she was really smart, pulled her aside and gave her a book to read. And for the whole rest of her academic career, she's an oceanographer. She's an oceanographer now and doing really well. And our teachers really do change lives, and they are the biggest capital in our expenses. And we need to support them as much as we can. We don't need our teachers to be burnt out. We need to know that we value and support them at every turn. So, in a nutshell, these are just a few of the things that I am concerned about and why I'm choosing to run again. I think I have something to contribute. And mostly, I want to open this up to discussion and listen to your questions. I'd love to hear your questions, your concerns about the schools, and questions you have about me and what it is I hope to do. So thank you all so much for being here and giving me this opportunity to reflect on our schools, which is one of the best things about Natick is always our schools.
Great. Thanks for that opening statement. We'll use our typical approach of people using the raised hand. And just to start us off, Donna, can you remind us, so you've served on the school committee in the past, right? Um, I don't, I mean, if you want to share when that was, that's cool. But what I'm most interested in is, I don't know, what's one of your biggest takeaways of maybe what about serving on it was news to you? Like, you know, that you, how was it different than maybe what you thought? And therefore, I want that to kind of lead into, I've got experience being on the school committee. I'm looking forward to this aspect of it, or I'm concerned about this particular part of it that's a challenge. That's a poorly worded question, but
It's a good question. And, we always kind of like spit out these things that school committee is about hiring and firing the superintendent. It's about creating the budget for the schools, and it's about setting policy. And I have served 2 terms on the school committee. And one of my colleagues on the school committee once sighed and said to me, "Are you sure you want to serve on this committee during my first year?" Because it is at times frustrating. You think you're going to be like, out in Concord, Massachusetts, creating a school and putting together all these little wonderful things like in the book Little Women and being an innovator. And I have to say, and people are like, oh, be careful how you say this, but I served 2 terms during a really tumultuous time in the history of the Natick schools. I did have the experience where we had a superintendent we had to let go, and we had to hire a new superintendent. But it was actually exciting because for the first time in the history of the school district in Natick, we hired a woman. And I don't know, call me old fashioned. I've still got a streak of pro-woman and feminist in me. I went to a women's college, and that was really exciting to me to go through that process. And it was hard. It was a really hard time. So I know what difficulties can be like on the school committee. I also know some of the joys that can happen on the school committee. One year during the budget, we were able to put enough money in to extend orchestra down through the middle school and the elementary school. So now if you go to a concert by our kids, you can see little kids playing the violin in a string orchestra. And I think music is a way of learning, and the arts are also a way of learning, and every child learns differently. And I think it's exciting that we were able to expand the music program. So I'm proud of doing that. I also helped, I hope, create more belonging by helping to establish Diwali and Eid al-Fitr as religious holidays, as days off from school. And I know still that means a lot to the communities of people who it affects. We certainly are becoming a stronger and larger Asian community, and I try to go. I think I've gone almost every year to the Diwali celebration at the Common Street, to celebrate that with a Hindu community. So there are things like that you can do, and there are programs that you can add, and so I've done that, and I just feel like there's still more work to be done. There's more ways that we can be stronger, that we can be better, and that's my interest in running again. I also voted to close Johnson School, and I think I have never been so-called forgiven for making that decision, but I I had to do what was the most responsible decision for the town. And we couldn't have a school that was not handicapped accessible and that was not open to the public. We were ripe for a lawsuit. If we'd had a handicapped teacher apply to teach, we would have had to turn them down because it wasn't fully handicapped accessible. And it's not so easy to put $3 or $4 million into a 75-year-old building and make it handicapped accessible, because as I understand it, once you go into the walls and you start doing work, you lose the ways in which the building is grandfathered in, so that everything becomes more problematic. And if you ever, I mean, it was amazing to look at the furnace in the Johnson School. I have never seen something so antiquated. I stood before it, I think, with my mouth open the first time I had seen it in a long time. And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. But that was a tough decision. I mean, it was incredibly stressful, the numbers of emails I got, and it was really hard, but I'm not afraid to make hard decisions if the job calls for it. What's important is maintaining responsibility to the flourishing of the town and the well-being of the town and the well-being of all the students in the town. Um, so I think I've said a lot.
You did. And at the very end, actually, you kind of transitioned, or kind of a segue to the other initial question I wanted to ask you, which you mentioned as you walked through your four-part base there, um, that the kids in the school system are our kids, that they're really a town resource. I guess the homeowners that are concerned about housing prices who don't have children, maybe they have adult children, but or no children. How do you address or that issue that the well-being or the robustness of the school system is something that is important to the town? It's not just something that's going to benefit the kids themselves and the parents of those kids.
How much I try to make that point. My father, who had several serious health conditions and ended up confined to a wheelchair, when we were voting on the high school override, I did everything to make my father as fully involved in his decisions as possible. And I said, Dad, what do you think? The taxes are going to go up. And I read him the information. The taxes may go up by this amount. Um, and it's for the high school. And he looked at me and he said, I am not voting against something that affects the children in this town. If we need a new high school, we need a new high school. He moved to Natick when they had shortly just finished the one that they were tearing down. And he's a builder, so he's like, oh, I wish I could tear my house down and rebuild my house. But he really was committed to education, and he wouldn't have flinched. He would have rather have given up other things. And I just like to remind people that we live in a complicated world, and right now, thoughtfulness is not the most proud part of our citizenry. And I just was listening. I mean, I almost had tears in my eyes about the our leader's reaction to Robert Mueller's death. It's good he's dead. And I didn't, I think it was always hard for kids to grow up, right? But I didn't grow up with the kind of incivility and unkindness that these children are growing up with. And I think we somehow have to convince our seniors that they have a stake in the game, that these children's lives matter, that our community depends on these children's lives. I do think there are more things that we can do for our seniors in the community. Um, Anna Nolan had started superintendent's brigade or something like that. And it was actually great. You could call if you needed some help with shoveling. And I never did. I always shoveled. But I tell you, I'm getting to that point where a little help would be great. But there was a resource that you could contact. And the hope always was when we put that planetarium in Kennedy, everyone said, oh, that's so extravagant. It's so extravagant. The hope was always that that planetarium would be open to the Natick community and the seniors could come and look up at the stars, right? I have a spiritual director who always said to me, Donna, look at the long view. What is this for eternity? You look at the sky, you look at the stars, and you get a different picture. And my hope is that the seniors and people in this community will benefit from some of the school resources that we have and will be welcome into that planetarium. And we'll learn about the hydroponics lab and um, we'll also, losing my train of thought, also be welcome at the wonderful plays and arts and things that we have. And that there might be some point at which, if you're a senior, you can go for free because you're a part of the community and your money is helping to gift all of this for the community. Dr. Sanchione used to do that. He used to provide the opportunity for seniors to enjoy plays and things for free. And it's a small point, but that means a lot. I mean, I've gone to the open door dinners at the Elk sometimes, and those small things mean so much to the seniors. It really, really does. It means the world to them when they see Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout troops and people coming in and serving them a free meal on a Monday night. So I think I would just try to show ways in which we are all connected, right? And we all share these resources. And I'm looking at Pat Conaway because my camera is there. But I think I once called him at a select board meeting. I remember this with his wife Jane. I'm not realizing that she was really Catholic and maybe Pat not so much. But I said, Pat, you are like the Saint Francis of Natick. You are always out. You're making us better people, encouraging us to pick up the trash, to leave the space we're visiting in a little bit better condition than when we came. And he really is. And Jane just kind of laughed. I think she thought, never quite thought of him as St. Francis, but I always, honestly, I always did. And I love how he asks our kids, and he's always thinking of ways that we can involve our children in helping to make the environment a little bit better. So it's those kinds of things that if we can grow the ways that we work together, I think that's really important. That maybe it'll be easier for elderly people to stomach the thought of like paying all this money for schools when they don't have kids in them. I also think you need to remember, like, I mean, my parents put 3 kids through the Natick schools, right? And they were paid for by people ahead of them, empty nesters ahead of them. And we need to help our empty nesters stay because if we lose them, we lose an important financial base because I read somewhere that it takes taxes from a house that's 1.25 million, something like that. This was something that they used to quote to pay the money for one child in the Natick schools. That's a lot of money. So everybody with family with children really lives off the largesse of others, and we just need to remind ourselves that we depend on each other, and we want to make it possible for people to grow old and to be vulnerable in Natick and to be the giving. People are good people overall, and to bring out their giving nature, because that's what this is about. It's about taking care of each other. That was a long-winded answer, and I have to tell you, I found my grade school report card, one of them the other day. My mom saved them all, and it was one from first grade, and it said, Donna is so shy. I'm really worried. She doesn't talk much. And I thought, oh my God, I guess it's the Natick schools that taught me how to talk a little bit more. So
No, that's fine. It's your answers, you know, help fill in the corners of your philosophy of life. I see Rick's hand up, and then also right after that, Ricky. So, but let's go with Rick first. Rick, got a couple.
Yes, yes. Yeah, loved your answer there, Donna. But I wanted you answered one part of my question. The other part was, what could we do to involve, high school students, but really at all levels students, even more in the community than they already are. I think the schools do a wonderful job of getting kids out, but do you see, or others see, opportunities for getting intergenerational, programs started? Things where students could even help, seniors with memory projects, or do things for seniors. I mean, I think nothing brings out our kindness more than somebody doing something kind for us. And not to go on that topic, but you've already done that. So there's a question. Thank you.
I think that matters. And I noticed that Wellesley has like a new program where it's like a SAGE program, and young people are meeting with the SAGE wise people in the community and to learn from them. And I think there's a lot more that we could do with oral history. We've done a lot with veterans, and we have a wonderful archive of recordings. And, one of the people who I've had a lot of loss in my life this past year, one of the people a friend I lost, grew up in my neighborhood, and she would come and sit with my dad sometimes so that I could just go to the grocery store or go and do an errand. And what my dad especially liked and enjoyed about her was that she remembered like growing up in the neighborhood and things about people and the neighbors and how Natick used to be. He loved talking about that. He loved that sense of history. And we have a lot of older people who are lonely, right? They're lonely. They'd like company. So I think if we could get and our children like really learn a lot about oral history and the community and such, I think there's more that we could do to connect students to elders in the community, and that they could learn from that. It could be like a mutual give and take. And I think that would be important. And of course, Pat's program, like they could be like, instead of like Pekin Cove, like, I mean, the amount of trash that's there. And that was on the Underground Railroad. That's a really significant site. Natick has significant sites. And I've actually learned a lot from Pat about that. And I've learned a lot from you, Rick, also. And there are more creative things that we can do to get people involved. I think we have student members on the school committee, and they're always asked for their opinion. When I was on the school committee, I always invited grade school children, middle school children to come and lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And it sounds like, oh, that's no big deal. But if you're a kid and you get to stand up and lead a group of adults in the Pledge of Allegiance, and you're on camera, that's a big deal. And you are doing something for the community. Whatever you can do to help our students feel involved, feel that their opinions matter. I think that students on the Net Zero Committee, for example, are amazing. I was just really struck by the letter they wrote recently to the Strategic Plan Committee about their goals. I think we need to ask them what they think and what their ideas are and what their hopes are. And as much as we can treat them as somebody at the table, because they are at the table, we're going to be depending on them, when we can't go out and we're confined to our chairs like my poor dad, et cetera. So maybe we need a task force. I understand recently that we're being certified as an Alzheimer friendly town. I don't think we're going to have it on the signs as welcome to Natick, an Alzheimer friendly town, but I think it is significant that we're going to recognize the elderly in all different cognitive levels, and that we do a lot like memory cafes and things like that. I think there's a lot. I mean, maybe we need some kind of like task force. We talk a lot about, one Natick, and it can kind of become like, are we really one Natick, or is it just something we say when we want to do an override? But maybe we need a one Natick committee to really think hard about ways that we can work on really being one Natick. I don't know if that gets at some of what you're raising.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Just to add to it conversationally a bit, I think that's a great idea. And one of the things that, I think the students and their parents are probably terribly concerned about now is future job prospects. And, if somebody wants to become a doctor, what's that going to be like in 10 years by the time they finish their education and come into it? What's going to be expected of them that they probably may not foresee? What of current medical practice is going to remain? What is going to disappear into AI? All of these questions are fascinating and very complicated. And I can see that there's more need than ever for interaction between, current professionals of all ages, not just seniors. And, but we have all these town resources, people like Roger Luckman, Dr. Roger Luckman, and so many others in professions who can, practically everybody could lend something to that. The future for electricians. I mean, every time I pay an electrician a fortune, which believe me is often in our house, just last week, for example, umpteenth time. I think what a great growing profession this is. I mean, it's incredible, and obviously, kids going, to technical schools get more of this probably, but it should be it has to be in all of our schools now because the job situation, looking ahead is just so vastly different. Kids who have grown up thinking they want to be a coder, well, you think again now, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and that's true of a lot of professions. So we're at a time where this is needed. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Donna, if you want to respond
Just
any more to that, but I do want to get to Ricky's question too.
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to respond that it's hard to even imagine the kind of jobs that our students will have in like 10 years down the road. I mean, even medicine, the field of medicine is changing radically. And there's this new practice where if you don't have a 10-year life expectancy, they're not going to do whatever procedure you might need. So we need more humanistic, more ethical thinking. But the most important thing that we can do for our children, everybody hates change, right? Just go on any of those Natick groups and it's like, you're going to do what to downtown? You're going to have us park backwards to Angle Park or do this or do that. And I'm kind of terrified of doing that. But, change, being afraid of change is a bad thing. I've a friend of mine who was studying calculus, an English major. I'm like, what the heck are you taking calculus for? Calculus is about change. And if I can't figure out change and live with change, what am I going to do? And change, that is one of the most important qualities we can teach our children to deal with is change, how to let go. And, again, what is this for eternity? Open the future, open new ways of doing things because their lives are going to change radically and they need to be resilient and creative enough to deal with change.
Cool. Ricky.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you, Ricky.
Okay. The other, how do I put this? when you talk about the cost, the high cost of education, the percentage of our budget that it consumes, it's important to realize that that the quality of your schools are a major factor into the desirability of your community, and that impacts the value of your homes. So that when you go to sell your home, you can get your asking price because you live in a community where the schools are excellent and people want to move into it. It increases the value of your property so that even if you don't have children in the schools, and we lived in Natick for 64 years, and for a majority of those years, we didn't have children in the schools anymore. We were able to get our asking price, and our home was valued. It appreciated greatly over the years. And that is an investment that everybody makes in their personal property. So if for no other reason, and I certainly agree with the eloquent way in which Donna has described the value of a good education, if for no other reason, people need to accept the cost of education these days. When we bought our home in 1959, I don't know what the purchasing power of $20,000 was, but that's what the home cost us. When we sold it at 700 and, I don't know, 30,000 or something. Granted, that was over many years, but the purchasing power was different, and we were able to get our price. So for those people who are upset at how much the schools cost, you tell them it's an investment, just as any other investment in their property. And the quality of life in the town, I can attest to the fact that when I got to Natick, it was a certain kind of town. And the change that I experienced, the change in so many aspects of life has improved and has just been an upward spiral isn't the word, but an upward trajectory. And the people of Natick are so lucky to live in Natick. I would give my eye teeth to still be there, but I come as often as I can.
Good to see you, Ricky. Donna, do you want to respond?
Your point is so important, Ricky. I mean, it is. And the house values have rose tremendously, and owning a home in Natick is a huge investment. I tend not to play the investment card first, but it is really important. And thank you for pointing that out. It makes Natick a really desirable town to live in. I think I beat you in terms of longevity. I'm living in what was my parents' house, and they bought it in 1951 for $10,000. And I always said to them, Mom, why didn't you buy the house across the street when you were looking? I mean, it's got another bedroom, it's a colonial, it's got like full-size rooms. It doesn't have those eaves like the Cape does. And she said, Oh, Donna, we couldn't afford that. That house was $12,000.
Yeah, that's
My
crazy.
grandmother who lived in Brookline said to my mom, You bought a cottage. You bought yourself a little cottage. And surprise, surprise, it actually meets the zoning requirements of a cottage. I learned at town meeting one time. But my parents loved Natick. They especially loved it as they got older. The people at the senior center were so kind to them. My mother, I can't tell you how many times my mother would say, people in Nate, it's so expensive. And she would be like, if they're coming around to assess the house, don't let them in. And I would just laugh. Don't let them in. Or I always thought I wanted a deck or a garage, but the tax people will be after me. So, and we would laugh. I mean, we would always laugh about that. She found humor. But she loved Natick and she found so many reasons to love it. And we have an amazing, long-standing Natick neighborhood where people really care for each other. And that's one of the best things about Natick. And when you find that, you're not happy about your property taxes sometimes, but Ricky is really right. And I was lucky when I went through the Natick schools, they were even rated more highly. They were the top 10 schools in the state. And we were really proud of that. And the shape of education, it changes. It changes all the time. We still have very, very good schools, and people move to this town because of the schools. So we need to be proud of that and claim that.
Thanks, Donna. Pat's been patient with his hand up, and then after that is Catherine. So, Pat?
Yeah, good to see you, Donna. Thank you for your kind words. I had a couple of questions as a retired teacher. The you mentioned how the minority students occasionally are getting microaggressions or issues that come up, and I was thinking about the larger issue of this happens in middle and high school, especially the social cruelty aspect of what goes on, and the kids. And when I was teaching, a lot of the teachers, a lot of us didn't even see it. It was done not during the class time. It was done in the hallways or maybe the cafeteria. There's some real issues there for educators to try to meet, and the guidance counselors and teachers and faculty. I think they might need some education about that. I know Spark does a great job of helping with that, and I was curious what's all for what United Natick and what Natick One and some of these groups. What can they do?
They do a great job. And I'm actually part of Natick is United, and I go to Spark programs when I can. But I also think we need very robust teacher professional development programs. And it's not like all of us need refresher courses in microaggressions and in being kind and not saying things that are cruel. And sometimes we don't see it. I mean, every single one of us needs that. And when I worked as the chaplain at Babson, one of the chaplains at Babson, they did have ongoing professional development that you were required, even as a chaplain. I mean, you would think you would know, but you were required to take, through human resources and other parts of the college. And I think that's important because we forget. We don't always see things. We need to be reminded of the ways that students are struggling. I mean, I almost cried a couple years back when I heard of a student who was afraid to wear her Star of David necklace because of the growing anti-Semitism. I mean, I just can't imagine that. I've never had that kind of an experience. But we need to do all that we can. Belonging is a huge part of this, and the kind of auxiliary programs are good, but we need them kind of woven into the warp and the woof of how we operate as a school system.
Does a teacher education program, the staff in service and so forth, sometimes focus on those issues?
Yes, and maybe like we have a refresher course. We have a faculty meeting and we say, okay, now we're going to do our annual update on microaggressions and how to be more welcoming, how to be more gracious, because I'm sure it happens between teachers too. You don't realize, but you're saying something that is denying somebody's reality or denying somebody's experience. And I think your point is really well taken because we live in an exceptionally unkind time. And I don't know how our students navigate this. It doesn't matter what your politics are. I mean, I've taught. I've taught conservative students, and I just want to help students think, right? And think through what they think. So I have no orthodoxy or nothing. Somebody needs to think. They just need to think well and think reasonably. And we need to do it on a regular basis, and to maybe
Yeah,
look at our programs too. And are we doing everything that we can with this program to help belonging? I think sometimes sports programs are especially ripe with the kinds of microaggressions that can happen. We need to, everything should be open for scrutiny, is what I think. And I think if it's right, the Quakers have the thing about being in the light. I think if something is right, you're not afraid of bringing it into the open and talking about it, right? Nothing is like a secret. So we need to do better with each other and our staff and our administrators, because it's not acceptable for children to be subjected to these kinds of microaggressions.
I
And
was just gonna, excuse me, Donna, but one other quick question. I noticed over the years I would have the students who are in the honor society come to me and ask me, "Hey, can we do a project here or there?" And I'd often help put together a cleanup project for them or something. But these were the kids in the honors society, and I think that there's a need to get more of the other kids involved in service, and the high achieving kids are going to be probably okay no matter what we do. But there are a lot of kids in the middle that are not really being recognized through sports or music or drama, or they're going through school almost invisible. And I think that
yeah,
whole group in the middle needs some serious attention. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, after you respond to that, Donna, I do want to move to Catherine.
okay.
But
Let me just
go ahead.
quickly
Yeah.
say, I was working at the Stop and Shop for the Natick Service Council food drive, and we had a couple of Achieve students working at the Stop and Shop who came out, offered help, and donated food because they said this is important and blah 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 blah. And those were not our honor school kids. Those were kids who just stepped up and knew what that was. And I couldn't agree with you more, Pat. It's our kids in the middle, our kids who are not viewed as honor school students. We need to help them recognize their gifts and the ways in which they belong. They matter. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can certainly revisit it too. I just wanted to be mindful that Catherine had her hand up. Catherine, do you want to come off mute? And
Thanks, Doug.
yeah,
So first off, I want to say that this is not a fair question. I acknowledge that I was unable to, I wanted to pose the same question to both Matts, but I was unable to be in this forum to do that. I have since talked to Matt Brand and posed this question. And Donna, you and I have talked a lot about affordability and budget. And on the town side, I'm deeply, deeply concerned because the rate at which the budget for the schools is increasing almost requires an override in 2 years solely for the schools. So the school budget, if we include shared services, is 65% of the total budget. Donna, you mentioned the cost to educate a student is 1.2 million. A home value, a home needs to generate 1.2. That was the case 3 years ago. Now it's a $1.9 million home that only generates taxes to educate one student. So, and that includes everything in the school budget that's school student related. So 1.9 million, which means that our businesses are carrying the load, and there's more of a push on the town side from residents, understandably, to have a split tax rate. When we do that, the businesses will leave. Natick Mall walked away from Providence Mall, just left it and let it go into bankruptcy. So I'm not going to go into all the downs. I mean, everybody knows here what some of the downside risks are. So after the override, just for perspective, for those who weren't following this closely, after the override, before the override, the school negotiation on 3-year contracts for the 3 teacher unions was a 3-2-2. On the town side, nobody got that. That doesn't include steps and ladders. So that means our teachers, and I'm not saying that we necessarily pay them less. I don't have a solution to this because I don't know. I don't understand the budget so well. What I do understand are these numbers. And so the question is, going forward, how do we ensure teacher quality, ensure that we are educating our students, but we are not requiring a median home value. That's a median home value of 2.5 million, say, in order to educate one child. And it's a tough question. And I apologize. I have not gotten an answer from either of the candidates. I don't know that there is an answer, but what are some of your ideas?
It's a really, really hard question, but I'm an ethicist and I think about ethical questions all the time. And, you know, you're right. I mean, our cops, we don't think about this, but actually they put their life on the line whenever they go out, right? I mean, we're lucky
Yes,
we have a very safe community, but somebody can take a shot on that at them and they could be hurt. And our firefighters, our firefighters and our cops were amazing to my parents, both of my parents when they were dying. And maintaining the quality of those services, it's critical. It's critical for all of us. I think we're going to have to, like always, constantly distinguish between wants and needs in the school budget. I mean, there are things that would be nice that we want, and there that we want, and then there are things that we need, and we are going to have to make some choices. We can't budget is if everything is possible because it's just not. And if we price out the seniors, the empty nesters in our town, then the dynamic that you're describing, I mean, maybe we'll get up to, what did you say, 2.4 or something? Maybe we'll get up to having to have that kind of a home and we'll become a wealthy, even wealthier community. And we've already gotten rid of like our working class constituents in this town, and economic diversity matters too. So we
I
need
completely agree. Completely agree.
neither of my parents went to college. My father worked with his hands and was a cabinet maker and worked really hard. We could live how we lived because my father could always fix something. When my mother was in the hospital one time at Leonard Morris, he said, "You've got to make me some kind of shade to get out the light of this room. It's really bothering me." Go up to the Home Depot and blah, blah, blah. My father's mouth was aghast, like, "Oh my God, I can't, start adding on to the hospital." But he's done all kinds of creative things, and I always had a deep respect for that. But we need to, I mean, it's like a family and a budget, right? I mean, I never got all that I wanted and growing up, and we always were, really careful with how we spent money. And I think we just have to be really careful. We need to give especially, I have this thing where I tend to look at things through the lens of the most vulnerable. So we especially need to help the most vulnerable students because they are most in need of help. I guess my mom was kind of like that too. I had an accident and the doctor said, "Oh, she needs to play the piano," or something like that. So my mother, we got an organ, but my mother arranged for lessons for my brother, the Irish prince, and said, "Well, you're smart enough to teach yourself." And I'm like, "Really?" but we have to be we just have to be as wise as we can, and we have to not be afraid to make cuts. I mean, we don't want to start making cutting teachers. I think that would be terrible to start cutting personnel, but there are ways I think that we could cut back. And I'm not a budget person, I'm not an economist, but I live very frugally myself, and I think we need to look very carefully at all of the decisions that we make because there's a lot on the line here, and we can't price out more vulnerable people in the town.
Thank you,
Thanks
Donna.
for that response. I had my own hand up mostly just to call attention. Brinley had put in the chat. Well, as usual, Brinley is supplementing our discussion here with all kinds of relevant links. So thank you for that, Brinley. And you also had a question kind of about AI in our schools. I don't know whether you want to amplify on that question, but it could just stand on its own to ask Donna, do you have opinions, concerns? How do you see the growing use of AI in our life intersecting with the school environment? But Brinley, did you want to elaborate on that at all yourself, or she's not coming off mute? So go ahead, Donna.
Well, I guess I'm not a Luddite, named after that guy Ludd in the Industrial Revolution, who was like involved with the weavers and opposed to all kinds of technology. I think technology can be really helpful, but AI is worries me because when we're talking school age children, we're talking children who are still developing the capacity to think critically and to learn to think for themselves. So to place this technology in their hands without thinking about how we're nurturing their own thinking ability is really worrisome. I have to say, just yesterday, I used AI because I need glasses. And yes, Warby Parker uses AI and they can tell you how the frames look, the frames that look best on you. And I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. But when you put it into an environment, I don't know that AI can't teach kids how to read. I mean, I'm sorry, but putting kids who are learning how to read in front of a computer, in front of screen time, and having their like deficiencies or their needs diagnosed with AI, there's nothing to substitute for human interaction, and we sorely need that, especially after going through the pandemic. Um, and it's even hard to do. I look forward to when we do Coffee with Purpose back in person, and I'm eating some yummy thing from Sweetwater's, and we're all talking. And uh, Martin Kessel's bringing in banana bread, or Rick, or whoever usually brings it in. But I do worry about AI. And AI is now, for example, dealing with a lot of our medical decisions and making those decisions on who's worthy of surgery and who's not worthy of surgery. And I kind of flinch at that. I do, Brinley, I do recognize the things that it can do and it can do well. But I want our I want our kids to be able to think critically for themselves before, and the Waldorf schools, none of the Silicon Valley people, a lot of them send their kids to Waldorf schools, and you may have heard of Waldorf schools. They don't use any technology. They don't use computers or any technology. And the rationale behind that is that from the Silicon Valley people is this is a technical skill. Our kids can learn this later. Our kids need to learn to think for themselves. They need to be able to read and think critically about it. And reading, we are a society that doesn't read. It's not just Natick, it's like everywhere. People just are not reading. Kids are not reading. So we have a lot of work to do to reclaim those basic strengths. But I guess I have mixed
Mhm.
reviews about it.
Okay. Thank you. Cindy.
So first, Donna, could you just like one word, could clarify when you were describing the annual refresher for um, discussion about microaggressions following in response to Pat's question, were
I,
you speaking about Babson or about Natick Public Schools? So there
oh,
was,
I was
yeah,
expressing a hope that we might do something more often in the Natick public schools, because I think Pat was right that microaggressions happen in so many ways that we're unaware, and that we need to find ways that, I hate to use the word woke because it's become like a bad thing, but we just need to become aware of how we're interacting. I mean, I
thank
know
you. I just wasn't clear whether you were talking about Natick or Babson. So my real question
does do
is,
Babson does it
yeah,
annually,
okay.
and I'm kind of wanting, Natick to add more on a regular basis this kind of education and professional development.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've been talking about budget for the last several minutes, and I'm, I'm relatively new to Natick. I'm curious about non-public funding that goes to help the schools. I imagine that there's some sort of
booster thing for sports. I don't know, and then I know that there's probably parking fees that students pay to park at the high school. And I don't know how the sports equipment, but how much private money is there, and what's your opinion about encouraging more private support of the schools for sort of
Um,
things that might be nice to have instead of necessary to have? Just curious.
well, the schools do get grant funding.
Mhm.
And I'm in favor, God bless David Linsky. He is so wonderful in sort of bringing home the bacon for the Natick public schools. And I'm in favor of getting as much grant funding as we can and being on the lookout to apply for those grants. And some of the user fees that you're talking about, I mean, they add money, but they're not significant sources of income. And there's always like equity issues involved with that, right? I mean, once upon a time, nobody paid to get to school, that school buses were free. And now it's quite a lot of money. And we also need to do like an equity audit for our sports because a football helmet can cost $500 to $1,000. And is that same, and that's provided, and is that same kind of money being provided for girls and girls sports? See, I told you, I never, I'm, that's important to me. That kind of like equity is important to me. And so the user fees are always something to be sad about. There are organizations that will help with that, like the Rotary Club. They're just amazing. Anybody in the Rotary Club, they help a lot. But they're not going to help with if the school sponsors a $5,000 trip to Peru. There's just no way that that can be underwritten by help with community organizations. And does the school need to sponsor a 5,000 trip to Peru? Dollar per trip to Peru when you're writing out students who can't participate in that. And when there's no clear policy on scholarships, who gets a scholarship and on what basis you get a scholarship. So you're putting parents in a position of like having to ask if they're forthright enough to ask. Um, there are a lot of questions. I mean, I went to this great school and we're having a milestone reunion soon. But when I got accepted into this school, um, they a woman in her 90s wrote me a letter, and she lived in Natick, and she said, I went to this school, and I'm going to write you and tell you all about it and encourage you. And she was amazing. I mean, I wrote to her for years, and it was just like I thought that I was becoming part of this sisterhood. I think that there's a lot that we can do. I mean, it's kind of anti-public school, but we can learn a lot from like private schools, how to create community and how to create relationships and building. And we have alums who don't think they have to give money to Natick High, that it wouldn't be worth their while because it's a public school. But they need to become more aware of like what the needs are and how they could do things like help a child enjoy a field trip that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. So um, there's a lot in creating alumni relationships in schools too. That's just a quick off the top of my head answer, but they do, and they need even more. They need to cultivate grant money even more, and that gets complicated when you do the budget too, because the schools have access to more money than just what is shown in the town budget.
Mhm.
So, is there already some sort of charitable fund that supports the schools at the discretion of, say, the superintendent? Does that already exist?
I'm sorry, my sister was just emailing me an emergency
Okay.
email. What was
Is,
your, can you
is
repeat the question?
does the Natick Public Schools, is there some sort of charitable fund already there that supports the schools that might be at the discretion of, say, the superintendent or principal, does any of that exist already? Do,
Well, it exists among the teachers, and
okay.
the teachers are amazing. The teachers contribute to this fund often, and I sat on the committee that made decisions about who would receive help from this fund. I
Mhm.
mean, we have teachers that develop cancer that need, extra help or something like that. So there is a source of some help for teachers. I'm not as aware of. I mean, it kind of depends on people's like goodwill. I'm not aware of formal funds that exist for.
You don't have to be quiet, Lemon. You don't, I'm done talking.
But
Sorry.
that's a great idea, Cindy. Cindy, that's really
Yeah.
good. Thanks for that question.
I see Pat's got his hand up. Pat?
Uh, yeah, I was just curious, Donna, I think was during COVID, is there still the free and free reduced lunch for the kids in the schools uh,
There is.
in
And
public net or Massachusetts public schools? Yeah.
yes, it has been funded by Massachusetts. And I think what's also important about that, because some people say, oh, we're giving lunches to people who don't need it. But on the other hand, we're helping kids eat who aren't always good about eating. Even my doctoral dissertation director would be like, you need to eat protein. How are you going to write this earth-shaking dissertation if you're not eating correctly? And I want to say that to every one of our kids. Plus, it also reduces the stigma. No child has stigma of having to go through a separate process for a free lunch, and they get free breakfast. So it's great.
That's good. Yeah, thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment, but I've got, I always have a couple of in my back pocket. Donna, particularly since you served on the school committee before, is there, as you see the school committee operating now and hoping to rejoin it, is there any particular aspect of it that you are most interested in? What would be your favorite part of being in the school committee? Or kind of on the flip side, is there anything about its current operations that you think maybe needs to shift focus, or any change in priorities as to how they divide their energies amongst all the things that they could be doing?
Well, I've gone to almost every single school committee and meeting, and I've spoken at public speak. Maybe I can't let go, but I do think we need to do more. Dovetailing on Cindy's question, we do need to do more for struggling kids and struggling families. And I chaired the policy committee. We need to come up with clear policies on how grants and scholarships are shared with students, and so students know that they are eligible for help and how they can apply for help and they're not embarrassed to apply for help. Um, it's going to be a big ask to get people to do a new memorial school, and it's important. It's an important ask, and I think that we need to do a lot of communication with that, and we need to make sure that building is like available to the community. I mean, these buildings are also now built as emergency shelters, right? And when I lost power for 2 or 3 days, I thought, boy, I'd love to walk down to the high school right now and have a little power. I mean, we are one Natick, and we need to do that. I would be excited about being able to do that and trying to bridge some of the school and town kinds of issues. I'm excited about the curriculum development. I've always wanted more reading and more writing. I taught writing across the curriculum at Cornell, and there are a few high school programs that have writing across the curriculum, because even if you're in STEM, if you're in science, you need to be able to write. And for some children, the stimulus, for example, I'm thinking geology as I look at Sarah. If for some students, it's like maybe they don't want to write about English or Hamlet or whatever. Maybe they'd rather write about rocks and rock formation and dating rocks. And that would be a wonderful way of inviting people into learning to write and knowing how to write, because writing is really important. I've taught seminary students who couldn't write, and I thought, my God, you're going to be in a parish and people are going to think we Catholics are illiterate. You've got to work with me here. You got to work a little harder. But so my point is, it's not just Natick. It's kind of a societal thing and a cultural thing. We need to read more. We need to write more. I would be excited to try and work on that more. Again, the belonging piece is really important to me. I was really excited. I encouraged one of our 16-year-old students of color to apply to be a delegate to the Democratic State Convention. And she not only won, she got up and spoke. She got the highest number of votes. And
Wow.
I'm so proud of her because I mean, she hasn't had an easy time. And that's also a way of saying, I mean, even if she had been at the Republican thing, it's a way of saying the voices of our kids matter and they're the future leaders and we're going to encourage them to do stuff like that. I'm sorry I'm so verbose and circuitous
No,
here.
not at all. You're these are wonderful answers. They really help illuminate, how you prioritize things in your life. Martin, you've got your hand up. You got a
Yeah,
follow-up.
I'll jump in for a late question. That kind of occurred to me. Thinking back when we were in school, which was a number of years ago, it seemed as though the school kind of just sort of did its own thing. The school committee did its own thing and provided for school for the kids, and everything was like hunky dory. There wasn't really a process that we knew about. There was obviously a political process that we weren't aware of. Um, so is that really, is there a consciousness now that things are not going to happen automatically? Is there more of a consciousness that if we want something good in the schools to happen, we have to actually make it happen rather than just sort of hope it's going to happen? Do you think, I mean, has that changed over the years? Is that something that people are more conscious of now?
Uh, I think people are trying to be more conscious of that. And we have some wonderful parents and caregivers in Natick who are doing their best to try and make it happen. And not to, say this too much, but public schools are such a rare opportunity. I mean, at no other time do you get to go to school with a Metco student who lives in Boston and takes a bus at 4 or 5 in the morning, or with somebody who really struggles academically, and they're going to be lucky if they can hold down a job. And I didn't know much about other religions. I came home from third grade with a dreidel, singing a dreidel song. My Irish grandmother was visiting, and she's like, "Oh my God, what's happening to my granddaughter? Maybe we should send her to a Catholic elementary school." My mother's like, "No, no, no. This is great. She has to get along with all kinds of people." So I mean, I think it was great that my Jewish third grade teacher was allowed to do that and to celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas in the classroom. And we've kind of swung the other way that, people can't always mention their religions or their traditions. And I don't know, we need to find ways to be creative and reclaim that because it is public school still a melting pot, and it's a slice of the life that we're all going to have to get along with and work with to achieve. And maybe we do need to step up even more. I mean, maybe the seniors in the town can step up and be mentors and do creative things. We need to be as creative as possible. I don't know. I'm kind of getting at what you're saying in a roundabout way, but it's a really important question you're asking, Martin, and it's really worth a lot more thought.
Yeah, no, good point, because I think the seniors probably more than anyone else that's been through the school system are in touch with the current situation in terms of what can be done better, what is being done well, and what is not being done well, and so forth. So it is for the seniors to kind of look towards the future.
Yes, and I still remember once upon a time being at a crowded town meeting with Marshall Leibowitz and everybody. It was just, I think I was just visiting, and they were talking about should they cut holiday lights. And there from the back of the high school auditorium came the voice of Ricky Ball and saying, I'm not Christian, I don't celebrate this, but what would this mean for people to drive into our town at the darkest time of year and for us to have no lights, for us to have no hope for the future? And I've always remembered that. And I think that people make a difference that way. The kind of involvement of our elders, she wasn't that elderly at that time, so forgive me. The kind of involvement of people in our town and the role models. I mean, that really matters, and we need to keep that up and encourage the voice of our kids.
Sarah, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just I hadn't intended to ask this question, but hearing this discussion about how to get, maybe older people involved and so forth. One thing that has occurred to me for a long time that could be an interesting thing to do. Somebody would need to organize it, but somehow to reach out to the community. There's so many retired people who have all kinds of expertise to share. And just have kind of a list of, I know when my kids were in school, I went into the classroom a couple times and did like a geology thing with them. We went at Johnson, and there's those of you who aren't familiar with Johnson, there's big rock outcrops behind the school. And we went and sat on the rocks and looked at them and talked, how did they get here? Why are they like this? And it was really hands-on for the kids, and I loved doing it. And, I'm sure there are other people, who have other areas of expertise that would welcome the opportunity to do that and make those kind of community connections. And, you know, we already know the stuff. It's not like we have to go have some expensive course to be able to do it. So I don't know, I just throw that out there as a thought more than a question. Um,
It's a good thought, and we can certainly capitalize on that and do more. I was just smiling. I was remembering once my father helping me with a math assignment, word problems, used to do word problems, and he would say, "Well, I wouldn't never cut a piece of oak this way. And this is the answer they're going to give you. And if you give them this answer, you're going to get it wrong." But nobody who knows the value of oak would cut it this way, because you can get more pieces out of it this way if you don't think with that formula.
yeah.
So I was courageous and I got it wrong. And I was proud of getting that wrong, because I thought I honored my father in that answer, and in being kind of frugal. But creativity, there's room for all kinds of creativity, and we need to muster it the best we can.
We're starting to draw close on our time. One other question I wanted to ask you about, Donna, was presumably over the next term of school committee, the continuing development of the plans for Memorial School will be, front and center. I guess kind of a two-part question, or yeah, two-part. One, do you have any thoughts on what you'd see as kind of the biggest challenges, or most significant things that we need to think about for how those plans develop, but maybe also um, the the differing roles of school committee versus school department. Um, what is it what's the school committee's role in that process versus the school department's role? Do you see any issues of a lack of public understanding of where the responsibility divisions lie there?
Well, for the first part of your question, I think a debt exclusion is a big responsibility for the people in Natick to take on, and the cost of building is prohibitive. You probably read about Lexington's building a high school, and it's $670 million. They're getting 100 million reimbursement for MSBA for the sustainability things that they're adding, but really a debt exclusion for $550 million. And having gone through the operational override that we just went through, and with strained town finances in the future uncertain, I think it's not a given that, I mean, it would be sad if it didn't get approved. And Natick's always been sensible in how it's built buildings, and Steve Myler's an amazing building committee chair and manages to get it done. And I'm sure some of my sustainability things may fall by the wayside, but it's going to be a struggle to get a debt exclusion override passed for memorials. So I see part of the school committee needing to make the case for that override, and needing to make sure the building committee is using judicious oversight in that planning and overseeing the process. And the responsibility of the school committee has always been funding, to make sure the funding is there for the schools, and more than the administration. But there are times when you're going to have to be tough, and you're just going to say, look, we'd like this, but we simply cannot afford it. These are not going to be easy days. These are not going to be easy days budget wise. And again, I mean, I have this dream of like kind of the little Louisa May Alcott days in Concord, Massachusetts, starting my dream school. And maybe a lot of school committee members think that you think of all the things you hope to change and you hope you can do. And at the end of the day, a lot of it is making sure the funds are there to responsibly be spent to sustain the schools and the children's outstanding education, and so that people think their investment, as Ricky Ball so poignantly pointed out, they think that their investment in Natick is worthwhile. So this not going to be easy.
Yeah. Seeing no other hands, I guess I would just invite you to, if you have any other kind of closing comments that you want to make, things that maybe you hoped might come up in discussion that haven't. And then after that, I'll turn it over to Brinley to educate us on any local events that we need to be aware of coming up. But
Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving me the time to speak with you today. I really appreciate that. And there's no huge overriding issue. I have respect for my colleagues. I think they're both good human beings. I've worked with Matt before. But again, I just, the still small voice and the voice of the vulnerable, the voice of the struggling people, that is so important to me. And I want to bring that to the fore. And I'm trying to bring that to the fore in my school committee race, because I still think that's important. So I hope you will strongly consider me and vote for me. And I think that our girl students still matter. You know, it's great that we're in that quiz show. You know, we like made the next round in the quiz show, but we have one girl on that team and the others are boys. And I look at that and I think, come on, we must have some smarter girls that we can add to that team, right? And I watched it the last time and I thought, you know, touche, this girl knows all the answers and she's butting in with all the answers. And some of the other towns have more girls on the team, more girls coaches. And so I would like to, it's a small symbol. But I would just like to be sure that our schools are welcoming enough to our girl students, to our students of color, our Jewish students, our Muslim students. Again, belonging is the foundation of everything. So thank you for considering your vote. So get out on March 31st and vote for McKenzie for school committee. Thank you.
thanks, Donna, very much. Great. So, Brinley, any local events we need to be aware of? I saw you put in the chat the town calendar and town agenda pages.
Yeah, thank you for being here today, Donna. I thank you for all the time that you give to the town over all the years. As I've mentioned many times, and I'll say it again, we are a town that runs on volunteerism. And if we don't have people step up, I can't imagine what would happen if we don't have people step up to volunteer their time. It's so critical. So I did put, I realized that so many times when I give these little updates that I don't really include everything that's going on. So I think from now on, I'm going to just put some of the calendars into the chat so that people can come back and look at them. Because it really does give you an incredible idea of what's going on. At least that's easy to find. So you also, outside of looking on the town website, you can look at Natick Patch. Natick Patch has a calendar, and they also list lots of events. The senior center always has lots of events. This week for town stuff, there's a bunch of stuff happening. There is a school committee meeting tonight. There is a select board meeting on Wednesday night. There is the EcoNatick Candidates Forum tomorrow night. Oh, I didn't put that in the chat. I'll put that in there.
The link, Brinley, was in Doug's email to econatick.org, where the Zoom link is also there.
Yeah, so everybody's
I'll
good.
put it in while you're talking.
Oh, okay, you're going to do it? Okay, great.
I'll do it.
Thanks. And then let's see what else. Spring has sprung, so hopefully, it certainly seems like when I'm walking around looking at the trees. So I would say also don't forget to check out the schools for stuff, because now all of the concerts are happening, and the theater programs are happening. They just did Beauty and the Beast this past weekend at Wilson, and I have to say I go to a lot of the stuff at schools, and we've got really talented arts and theaters and music going on in our town from our kids. And if you're looking for something to do, it's a great way to support the schools. Every time that you go, it helps support the kids doing the arts. The tickets, the money they get from the tickets helps support the programs, help to make the programs happen. So I always recommend that. There is not another memorial school building meeting yet. We are waiting to hear back from the OPM request for services. And, I'll update you as soon as I know anything about that.
That sounds great. Catherine, I see you've got your hand up.
Just one quick thing for those of you who see the agenda for the select board for tomorrow night. We are reading into the record a commendation / proclamation for Paul Carew, because he retires technically or officially on Friday, and Rich Sidney steps off the board on April 1. Paul will not be able to be there tomorrow night, so I just wanted to let you know, if you were watching or you see it and you think it's kind of a lackluster response, or acknowledgement of all of his service to the town and for veterans. It's just that we will invite him back in April and have a proper send-off. Rich just wanted to be a part of it, and rightly so. So we're going to do that tomorrow night.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing that back to the forefront. Paul has certainly been a treasure and a resource to the town, and was telling us the last time he was speaking that he's so passionate about a lot of his work that there are aspects of it that it seems like he'll be continuing, even though not a town employee. So we look forward to that. And Brinley, yeah, thanks for calling out attending school events, and particularly the artistic talents of the students. Going back way back in the discussion to one of the things Donna mentioned about just kind of putting seniors and students in the same room. Sarah and I had the pleasure of, and Bill Ramage, of participating in that Sages and Seekers program that the Wellesley High School did, where they paired a senior with a high school junior over a series of a month and a half for just some fascinating discussions. And then also some fun skits that the students put on to kind of recap the themes of some of what we told them about our lives. So it's if you don't happen to have children or grandchildren in your life, you got to find ways to connect with these high school kids. They're amazing.
Yeah, Doug, I can just say you've mentioned Sages and Seekers before, and I've heard other people talk about it, and I really wish that people would email Dr. Spash about that and email the school committee about that. And really, so the school committee has a liaison. So the school committee, how they work is that the members all get to be liaisons for other things. We have a liaison that goes to net zero. There's a budget subcommittee. There's a liaison that works with Metco. There's liaisons that work with all of the other groups that need to be communicated with. And I think that you guys should email about the Sages and Seekers, because I think giving your personal experience will help boost it some more. And I know that we haven't been able to do as much with the Community Senior Center, even though the school committee has been communicating with them. It's been really hard to develop more programs. I think this is a great example of a way that could be an opportunity for them. And so I really hope that you could reach out maybe to all three, because I think that reaching out to the community senior center, the school committee, and Dr. Spash with a program like that is a great idea.
Yeah,
I
good
think a
tip.
suggestion for a future Coffee with a Purpose might be to have somebody from the Wellesley program, Sages and Seekers, somebody from the Council on Aging, like Paula Panchuk is a retired Natick teacher, and then even maybe a Natick senior like you, as Sarah, who have participated in that Sages program to do it. I mean, maybe it would stimulate people to want to do something like that in Natick.
Good suggestion. Yeah. And it's a good segue. In May on, our speaker slots are generally open. We'll be finishing. Oh, Ricky, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Sages and Seekers started in Natick, and we had a robust program. Jay participated for, I think, 2 or 3 seasons, and I did as well. Not as many as he, but we did Sages and Seekers. At that time, it was physically housed at the Walnut Hill School, and it was great. There were things that we did with the students, such as I was paired with a drama student at Walnut Hill, and for the first time, I got the sense of what it was like to be an actor. My son is a professional actor, and it put me in touch with the way that he had to uh, the things that he had to do to get into a character, and it was fascinating. It was a real eye opener for me, and so I'm sorry that we lost that connection, but we can reestablish that. The other thing that a way of participation, Natick Education Foundation, the recipients of the Shining Light Award, Jay and I were honored with a Shining Light Award. And when you get that recognition, they give you $1,000 that you can use in the public schools in some way. And we used it to provide um, uh, let me think. It was the oh my gosh, what's the name of the organization that Dennis Barr works for them? Oh, no.
Firkins Reed. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the name of the organization that provides curricula to schools on the Holocaust and broadens the perspective from that Jewish experience to other cultures and other, and think of the name of it. My gosh, my age is showing. It really was a wonderful thing. And I think the principal at the time was the woman who later on became school superintendent. Again, I'm blanking on her name, but it was a wonderful opportunity to provide some additional educated and cultural diversity education to kids in the middle school. So there are opportunities to provide those kinds of links. And I volunteered to speak at the schools, and I have to say I wasn't called upon all that often, but I would still volunteer if there were a demand. So really, thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ricky, I think you mean facing history and ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh my God. Yes, that's what we did. We used the $1,000 with Facing History and ourselves, and they had a semester of education. So that was good. Thank you for that.
Good. Well, thank you, everybody. Great discussion as usual. As I said, next week we'll conclude candidates with a discussion with Carla Sangri, who's, I believe, an incumbent, but running for a seat on the Board of Health. So we'll get to learn a little bit more about the Board of Health and what they do. Then we'll take have a visit from Jillian. To get lots of sustainability updates, and then we'll turn our attention to Springtown meeting.